Tonight you are exactly where you need to be. Not because this moment is perfect, but because this moment is here and you are in it, and that is enough. We will walk together through ancient stories that have guided restless hearts toward peace for thousands of years. Stories not of heroes who conquered their pain, but of ordinary people who learned to meet their struggles with gentleness and found something profound waiting on the other side of that gentleness. These are not lessons to memorize or rules to follow. They are invitations to see differently, to soften the grip of control, to discover that the deep rest you have been searching for has been inside you all along, patient and unchanging, like a still pond waiting beneath the ripples of your busy mind. We will journey through teachings on letting go, on presence, on compassion, and on the simple radical act of allowing life to be what it already is. Welcome to Sleepy Monk. This is your refuge, a space where there is nothing you must accomplish, no problem you must solve tonight, no version of yourself you must become before you are worthy of rest. Simply let these words wash over you like gentle waves. If something resonates, let it settle. If something does not, let it pass. There is no test at the end, no right way to listen. If this path toward inner quiet calls to you, I invite you to subscribe and return whenever you need to remember the peace that belongs to you. For now, just breathe. Let your body settle into the surface beneath you. Let us begin. Our first steps on this journey take us to the heart of what the Buddha discovered under the Bodhi tree over 2,500 years ago. He saw something so simple and yet so profound that once it is truly understood, the whole landscape of life changes. He saw that we suffer not because life is difficult, which it sometimes is, but because we are constantly at war with the present moment. We want this, we do not want that. We cling to pleasure and push away pain. We build elaborate fortresses of should and must and need in our minds, and then we wonder why we feel trapped. This resistance to what is creates a friction that runs through almost every aspect of our lives. It is the low hum of dissatisfaction, the feeling that something is not quite right even when nothing is particularly wrong. But here is the profound hope in this teaching. The friction is not the truth of life itself. It is what happens when an untrained mind meets life. When we learn to meet each moment with acceptance instead of resistance, when we stop demanding that reality be different than it is, something extraordinary happens. The friction dissolves, and beneath it we find a natural ease, a quality of okayness that does not depend on circumstances being perfect. This ease is what allows true rest. There was once a potter named Hana, who lived in a village known throughout the region for its beautiful ceramics. Hana had apprenticed under a master potter since she was a girl, and by the time she reached adulthood, her skill was undeniable. Her bowls were perfectly symmetrical, her vases elegantly curved, her teapots both beautiful and functional. People came from distant towns to purchase her work, and she took great pride in every piece she created. But with this skill came a terrible anxiety. Hana could not bear imperfection. If a bowl had the slightest wobble, if a glaze pooled unevenly, if a handle sat at an angle even a hair's width off center, she would smash the piece and start over. Her workshop floor was littered with shards of almost perfect pottery. She would spend hours, sometimes days, on a single piece, obsessing over every detail, unable to let anything leave her workshop unless it matched the flawless image in her mind. This perfectionism bled into every corner of her life. Hana could not relax in her home because she would notice things that needed straightening or cleaning. She could not enjoy meals because she would critique every flavor and texture. She could not maintain friendships because she expected others to be as exacting as she was, and inevitably they disappointed her. Sleep was difficult because her mind would replay the day's work, analyzing every tiny flaw she had noticed or might have missed. One season, a traveling monk came through the village. He was an old man with a gentle face, and he carried only a small wooden bowl for receiving alms and a worn blanket. Hana saw him sitting quietly by the temple one afternoon, and something about his stillness drew her. She approached and, without quite meaning to, She began telling him about her work, her struggles, her exhaustion with her own impossibly high standards. The monk listened without judgment, his eyes kind and attentive. When she finished, he simply nodded and said, "Tomorrow, would you make something for me?" Hana agreed, eager to show him her skill. "What would you like?" she asked. "A tea bowl," he replied. "But I have one condition. You must make it quickly, without pausing to examine it, without correcting anything, without starting over. Just make it and bring it to me when you are done." Hana felt a flutter of panic in her chest. Make something without checking her work, without ensuring perfection? It went against everything she had trained herself to do. But something in the monk's steady gaze made her agree. The next morning, Hana sat at her wheel with a ball of clay. She took a breath and began to throw the bowl, forcing herself not to stop, not to measure, not to adjust beyond what her hands naturally did. Her mind screamed at her to slow down, to check the symmetry, to fix that slightly uneven rim. But she pushed through the discomfort and finished the piece in a fraction of the time she usually took. When she pulled it from the wheel, she saw all its flaws immediately. The rim was irregular, the walls were slightly thicker on one side, there was a small fingerprint in the clay near the base. It was, by her standards, deeply imperfect. She glazed it simply and fired it, and when it came from the kiln, the flaws were even more visible. The glaze had pooled unevenly in one spot, creating a dark patch. She carried it to the temple with a mixture of shame and curiosity, wondering what lesson the monk intended to teach her. He accepted the bowl with both hands and examined it with genuine attention. He ran his fingers over the irregular rim, noted the uneven glaze, observed the slight asymmetry. Then he smiled, a smile of such warmth that Hana felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. "This is beautiful," he said simply. Hana started to protest, to point out all the flaws she had been forced to ignore, but he raised a hand gently. "Let me show you something," he said. He filled the bowl with water from the temple well and held it up to catch the afternoon light. The water settled perfectly, reflecting the sky. The irregular rim created an interesting interplay of light and shadow. The dark patch of glaze looked like a cloud drifting across the reflection. "Does this bowl hold water any less perfectly because its rim is not even?" the monk asked. "Does it become less useful because one side is slightly thicker? Does the water taste different because of that fingerprint?" Hana shook her head slowly, seeing the bowl with new eyes. "You have been making pottery for an idea of perfection that exists only in your mind," the monk continued. "But this bowl was made for the world as it actually is, where hands tremble slightly, where glazes flow according to their own nature, where beauty often emerges from what we did not plan. You have been at war with the reality of being human, which is to be imperfect, to make mistakes, to create things that bear the marks of their making." He paused, taking a sip of water from the bowl. The Buddha taught about dukkha, which people often translate as suffering, but it is more like friction or dissatisfaction. It arises when we demand that reality be other than it is. You have been creating dukkha for yourself by demanding that your work, your life, your very existence be flawless. But perfection is not the goal. Presence is the goal. Wholeness is the goal. Accepting what is, as it is, in this moment, that is the goal. Hana felt tears sliding down her cheeks, though she could not have said exactly why. Something in her had been exhausted for so long, fighting a battle that could never be won. "What if I make things that are truly flawed?" she asked quietly. "What if I produce work that is actually bad?" The monk smiled again. "Then you will learn from it and make the next thing. But you will not have wasted your energy fighting against the nature of being human. You will not have missed the joy of creation because you were too busy judging the creation. And you will not have destroyed beautiful things because they did not match an impossible standard." Over the following months, something shifted in Hana. She continued to craft pottery with skill and care, but she stopped destroying pieces that were imperfect. She began to see that the slight variations in her work gave each piece character and uniqueness. Her customers noticed too. Some said her new work had more soul, more life to it. It was as if by allowing herself to be human, she had allowed her pottery to become more fully itself as well. But more importantly, the terrible tension that had gripped her life for so long began to release. She could sit in her home without immediately looking for things to fix. She could share a meal without analyzing every bite. She could talk with friends without expecting them to meet impossible standards. And at night, when she lay down to sleep, her mind no longer replayed an endless litany of flaws and failures. She had learned what the monk taught her. That peace comes not from perfecting life, but from accepting it. That rest is found not in flawlessness, but in allowing things to be as they are. That the friction we feel is not because life is wrong, but because we are constantly insisting it should be different. This teaching about dukkha and its cause is the foundation of everything else the Buddha taught. Once we see how much of our suffering comes from our own resistance to reality, we can begin to practice a different way of being. We can meet each moment with acceptance instead of judgment. We can hold our experiences lightly instead of gripping them so tightly that we hurt ourselves. We can rest in what is rather than exhausting ourselves reaching for what we think should be. As you rest here now, notice if there is any place in your body where you are holding tension, any way you are resisting this moment, wishing you were already asleep or worried that you will not sleep well enough. Can you soften that resistance just a little? Can you allow this moment to be exactly what it is, with you exactly as you are, neither more nor less? This is the practice. Not perfection, but this gentle allowing, again and again. In a monastery high in the mountains, there lived a young monk named Daichi, who had come to practice with great determination. He had read many books about enlightenment before arriving and had clear ideas about what his spiritual path should look like. He imagined that through dedicated meditation, he would quickly overcome his anger, his desires, his restless thoughts. He would become calm, compassionate, and wise. He would be transformed into the kind of person he had always felt he should be. But after 6 months at the monastery, Daichi felt like a failure. He still got irritated when other monks were loud during silent periods. He still felt desire when he remembered his former life. He still had days when his meditation was nothing but a storm of random thoughts. He had imagined that by now he would be peaceful and enlightened, sitting in serene meditation like the statues of the Buddha he had seen. Instead, he felt more aware of his flaws than ever before. One evening, after a particularly frustrating day of distracted meditation, Daichi approached the monastery's teacher, a woman named Anzan, who had practiced for over 40 years. "Teacher," he said, his voice tight with frustration, "I have been here for half a year and I am no better than when I arrived. I still get angry. I still want things. My mind is still chaotic. When will I finally change? When will I become the person I came here to become?" Anzan looked at him with eyes that held both warmth and something that might have been amusement. "Tell me, Daichi, when you sit in meditation and a thought arises, what do you do?" "I try to let it go," he replied. "I try to return my attention to my breath. And when the thought arises again, I let it go again and return to the breath." "And how many times do you do this in a single meditation session?" Daichi considered. "Sometimes, hundreds of times." "And do you judge yourself each time? Do you tell yourself you are failing because thoughts keep arising?" "Yes," he admitted quietly. "Every time a thought appears, I feel like I am doing it wrong." Anzan nodded slowly. "So hundreds of times in each meditation session, you practice letting go. Hundreds of times, you gently guide your attention back to the present moment. Hundreds of times, you choose awareness over distraction. And yet, you tell yourself you have not changed, that you are making no progress." She paused, letting him absorb this. "Daichi, you came here with an idea of what transformation should look like. You expected to become a different person, calm and serene, empty of difficult emotions. But that is not what the practice does. The practice does not erase your humanity. It teaches you how to be with your humanity in a different way. She gestured to the garden visible through the window, where the season's first snow was beginning to fall. See that cherry tree? In spring, it blooms. In summer, it is full of leaves. In autumn, the leaves turn and fall. In winter, it stands bare. The tree does not become a different tree with each season. It is always itself, always changing, always whole. You are the same. You have not failed to transform. You are transforming constantly, with every moment of practice, with every time you notice a thought and choose to return to the present. The problem is not that you are not changing. The problem is that you are comparing your real, living, changing self to a fantasy of what you think an enlightened person should be. Daichi felt something shift inside him, a loosening of a grip he had not fully realized he was holding. But the anger, the desires, the chaotic mind, shouldn't those go away, he asked. They arise and they pass, Anzan replied. What changes is not whether they arise, but how you relate to them when they do. Before you came here, you were probably lost in your anger when it arose, completely identified with it. Now, even when you are angry, part of you knows you are angry. You have awareness of the anger rather than being only the anger. That is transformation. Before, you probably fought against your desires or indulged them without question. Now, you notice them, you see them clearly, you have choice in how you respond. That is transformation. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the falling snow. The Buddha did not teach that we would stop being human. He taught that we could be fully human without adding unnecessary suffering to the natural difficulties of life. Anger will arise. That is human. But you do not have to feed the anger with stories and justifications until it becomes rage. Desire will arise. That is human. But you do not have to let desire drive you into grasping and dissatisfaction. Thoughts will arise. That is what minds do. But you do not have to believe every thought or follow every mental pathway. She turned back to face him. You are doing exactly what you came here to do. You are learning to meet yourself with awareness instead of judgment. You are learning that the goal is not to become perfect, but to become present. Every time you notice you are distracted and gently return your attention, you are practicing the most profound transformation there is. You are learning to be here, in this moment, as you actually are. Not as you think you should be, not as you were yesterday or might be tomorrow, but as you are right now. Daichi felt his eyes filling with tears. For 6 months, he had been carrying the weight of his own impossible expectations, judging himself for being human, treating every arising thought or emotion as evidence of failure. And all that time, he had actually been doing exactly what he needed to do. He had been practicing presence, practicing letting go, practicing awareness. The transformation he was looking for had been happening all along. He just had not recognized it because it did not look like the fantasy he had been carrying. So I do not need to wait until I am perfect to be at peace, he asked. You already are at peace, Anzan said softly. Peace is not something you achieve in the future when you finally become good enough. Peace is what is here when you stop fighting with the present moment. It is what remains when you let go of the demand that you be anything other than what you are right now. The practice does not create peace. It removes the obstacles we have placed between ourselves and the peace that is always available. That night, when Daichi sat for evening meditation, he approached it differently. When thoughts arose, he did not judge himself. When he felt his mind wandering, he smiled slightly and gently returned to his breath, not as a failure returning to try again, but as a practitioner doing exactly what practitioners do. When frustration came, he noticed it with curiosity rather than criticism, and in that shift, that subtle change in how he met his own experience, he found something he had been seeking all along. Not the absence of thoughts or emotions or distractions, but a spaciousness that could hold all of them without being disturbed by them. A peace that did not require perfection. This teaching is vital for anyone walking a path of inner development. We often approach spiritual practice with the same aggressive perfectionism we bring to other areas of life. We want to measure our progress, achieve our goals, become the enlightened beings we imagine we should be. But the Buddha's path is not about achieving a future state of perfection. It is about waking up to this moment exactly as it is. It is about meeting ourselves with compassion instead of criticism. It is about understanding that we are not broken things that need fixing, but whole beings learning to see our wholeness. When we hold ourselves with this gentleness, when we stop demanding that our meditation be perfect, or our emotions be only positive, or our minds be permanently calm, we discover that transformation happens naturally. Not because we are forcing ourselves to change, but because we are allowing ourselves to be seen, to be known, to be accepted. And in that acceptance, something tight begins to loosen. Something defensive begins to soften. Something that has been exhausted from fighting can finally rest. As you lie here now, breathing in and breathing out, can you meet yourself exactly where you are? Not where you think you should be by now, not where you hope to be someday, but right here, in this moment, with whatever you are feeling, whatever thoughts are passing through, whatever sensations are present in your body. Can you meet all of it with the same gentle acceptance that Anzan offered to Daichi? This is not giving up on growth or settling for less than you could be. This is the foundation from which all real growth happens. This is the soil in which transformation takes root. In a village near the sea, there lived an old fisherman named Tomo, who had spent his entire life on the water. He knew the ocean's moods, could read the sky for coming weather, understood the patterns of fish and tides. He had taught his son Kenji everything he knew, passing down generations of accumulated wisdom about the sea. Kenji had grown into a skilled fisherman in his own right, respected by the other villagers for his knowledge and his good catches. But as Tomo grew older and his hands became stiff with age, he could no longer handle the heavy nets or manage the boat in rough weather. The work fell more and more to Kenji, until finally Tomo could only sit on the shore and watch his son go out each morning. This transition was harder for Tomo than he had expected. His identity had been built on being a fisherman, on providing for his family, on his skill and knowledge. Now he felt useless, watching others do what he could no longer do. He became bitter and critical, pointing out every small mistake Kenji made, offering unsolicited advice, unable to accept that his time on the water had passed. Kenji, for his part, tried to be patient with his father, but the constant criticism wore on him. He knew the ocean, as well as Tomo did, had learned from the best teacher he could have had. He did not need to be told how to read the tide or where to find fish. The relationship between father and son, once warm and collaborative, became strained and difficult. One evening, after a particularly tense day, Tomo walked along the beach, trying to settle his troubled mind. He came upon a woman sitting on a large rock, watching the waves. She was a traveling nun, her robes simple and worn, her face peaceful in the fading light. Tomo found himself sitting near her, and after some time in silence, he began to speak. He told her about his life as a fisherman, about teaching his son, about no longer being able to work, about how useless and irrelevant he felt now that his fishing days were over. The nun listened with complete attention, not interrupting, not offering quick reassurances. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Tell me about the ocean. What is it like in winter compared to summer?" Tomo was surprised by the question but answered, "In winter, the ocean is dark and cold. The waves are powerful and dangerous. In summer, it is bright and warm. The water is gentler, more welcoming." "And is the winter ocean less the ocean than the summer ocean?" she asked. "No, of course not. It is always the ocean, just expressing itself differently in different seasons. And when the tide is low and much of the beach is exposed, is the ocean less the ocean than when the tide is high? No, the ocean is still the ocean. The tide is just the ocean's natural rhythm." The nun nodded. "You understand the ocean's nature. You do not expect it to always be summer. You do not judge it for the tide going out. You accept that it changes, that it expresses itself in different ways at different times, and through all those changes, it remains itself. She turned to look at him fully. But you do not offer yourself the same understanding. You expect yourself to always be summer. You judge yourself for the tide of your life going out. You have been a fisherman, and that was one season of your life, one expression of who you are. Now you are in a different season, and you are fighting against it, demanding that you still be what you were, that your life have only one form forever. Tomo felt the truth of her words settle into him, heavy and uncomfortable, and somehow liberating at the same time. "But if I am not a fisherman, who am I?" he asked quietly. "You are the one who knows the ocean," she replied. "You are the one who taught his son. You are the one who can watch the waves with understanding. You are the one who is alive right now, in this moment, in this body as it is. The ocean does not cease to be the ocean when winter comes. You do not cease to be yourself when the form of your life changes." She paused, letting the sound of the waves fill the space between them. The Buddha taught about impermanence, about how everything changes and nothing stays the same. This includes our bodies, our abilities, our roles, our identities. We suffer when we cling to a version of ourselves that belongs to the past, when we demand that life remain in one season forever. But if we can learn to flow with the changes, to be present to what this moment asks of us rather than what past moments asked, we find that we are always enough, always whole, exactly as we are. "So, I should just accept that I am useless now?" Tomo asked, a flicker of his old bitterness returning. "No," the nun said firmly. "You should see that usefulness is not a fixed thing. You are useful in different ways now. Your son does not need your hands to pull nets. But he might need your wisdom when he faces a difficult decision. He does not need you to tell him what he already knows about fishing, but he might need to simply be with you, to have a father who is at peace, who has learned to age with grace instead of bitterness. The village does not need you to catch fish anymore, but it might need your stories, your experience, the presence of an elder who has lived fully and learned deeply." She stood, preparing to continue her journey. "And perhaps most importantly, you need to learn that your value is not only in what you can do for others. You are valuable simply because you are here, because you are alive, because you are a part of this world. The ocean does not justify its existence by being useful. It simply is, and its existence is enough. You are the same." In the days that followed, Tomo began to practice what the nun had taught him. When he felt the old bitterness rising, he would remind himself that he was in a new season of life, and fighting against it only created suffering. He stopped offering constant advice to Kenji, trusting that his son had learned well. Instead, he began to simply be present, to sit with the other elders in the village, to tell stories of the sea to children who gathered around him, to watch the ocean with eyes that had learned not just to see but to accept. Slowly, his relationship with Kenji began to heal. Without the constant criticism, they could talk as equals, as two men who both loved the sea and understood it in different ways. Kenji sometimes asked for Tomo's perspective on difficult decisions, not because he needed to be told what to do, but because he valued his father's experience and wisdom. And Tomo could offer his thoughts without attachment to whether Kenji followed them, trusting that his son would make his own wise choices. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset over the water, Kenji said quietly, "You seem different, father. More peaceful." Tomo smiled. "I am learning to be an old man instead of fighting to still be a young one. I am learning that life changes and I can change with it, that the ocean of my life has many seasons and they are all valid, all part of the whole." They sat in comfortable silence, father and son, watching the light fade over the water they both loved, each complete in themselves, each accepting the season they were in. And in that acceptance, there was a peace deeper than any that comes from accomplishment or usefulness or being anything other than what you are. This teaching about impermanence and acceptance is woven throughout all of Buddhist wisdom. Nothing stays the same. Bodies age, roles shift, abilities change, relationships transform. We can fight against this truth, clinging desperately to how things were, demanding that life stop flowing and hold still for us. Or we can learn to flow with it, to be present to what this moment is asking of us, to find our wholeness not in remaining fixed, but in being fully alive to whatever season we are in. As you rest here, you too are in a particular season of your life. Perhaps it is a season you chose, or perhaps it chose you. Perhaps it is what you hoped for, or perhaps it is something unexpected. Can you meet this season with acceptance instead of resistance? Can you trust that, like the ocean, you are always yourself, even as you change? Can you let go of demanding that you be anything other than what you are right now? This is not resignation. This is the deepest form of wisdom. This is how we find peace in a world that is always changing. There was a merchant named Fumio who traveled between villages buying and selling goods. He had built a successful business through careful planning and shrewd decisions. He prided himself on his ability to predict what people would want, to buy low and sell high, to never make a foolish trade. His wealth grew steadily year after year, and with it grew his confidence in his own judgment. But Fumio had a problem. He worried constantly about his merchandise. When he purchased goods, he would lie awake, wondering if he had paid too much. When he sold them, he would agonize over whether he could have gotten a better price. He would carry lists in his mind of everything he owned, constantly calculating value and potential profit. Even when business was good, he could not enjoy his success because he was always thinking 3 steps ahead, planning the next trade, worrying about what might go wrong. One day, Fumio was traveling through a mountain pass with a heavily loaded cart when one of the wheels struck a rock and broke. He was stranded on a lonely stretch of road with no village nearby and no way to move his goods. He sat beside his broken cart, his mind spinning with anxiety. The merchandise would be late. He would miss other opportunities. Perhaps thieves would come. Perhaps rain would ruin everything. The list of potential disasters seemed endless. As evening approached, an old monk came walking down the road. He saw Fumio's predicament and stopped to help. Together, they managed to temporarily repair the wheel well enough to limp slowly to the next village. Along the way, the monk noticed Fumio's constant agitation, the way he kept checking and rechecking his goods, the worried lines etched deep in his face. When they reached the village inn, the monk invited Fumio to share tea with him. Fumio accepted, though his mind was already racing ahead to finding a carpenter in the morning, to calculating how much the delay would cost him. As they sat together, the monk asked, "What are you carrying in your cart that weighs so heavily on you?" "Silk and pottery and tools," Fumio replied. "Valuable goods that I need to deliver." "And what are you carrying in your mind?" the monk asked gently. Fumio paused, confused by the question. "What do you mean?" "I see you carrying your cart of goods," the monk said, "but I also see you carrying something heavier. Every moment, you are transporting worry from the past into the present, and from the present into the future. You are carrying goods that exist only in your imagination, lost profits that have not happened, disasters that may never come, regrets about decisions already made. This invisible cart you are pulling is far heavier than the one on the road." Fumio felt something tight in his chest. It was true. His actual cart had broken, but he had been adding load after load of worry to his mind's cart, and that cart never stopped, never rested, was always moving forward under an increasingly impossible burden. "How do I stop?" he asked. "How do I put down this burden? These are real concerns. My business depends on good decisions. I cannot simply stop thinking about the future." The monk smiled. The Buddha taught about right effort. There is a difference between skillful planning and useless worry. Skillful planning happens when you need to make a decision. You think clearly about your options, you choose wisely, and then you act. Once the decision is made, it is made. But worry is when you continue carrying that decision in your mind, replaying it endlessly, imagining all the ways it might be wrong. creating suffering for yourself that serves no purpose. He poured more tea for both of them. Right now, your wheel is broken. This is a fact. You cannot change it by worrying. In the morning, you will find a carpenter and have it repaired. That is skillful planning. But between now and morning, what does your worry accomplish? Does it fix the wheel? Does it change anything about your situation? Or does it simply steal the peace from this moment, this warm tea, this safe place to rest? Fumio realized he had barely tasted the tea, had not noticed the warmth of the fire, had not felt grateful for the shelter of the inn. His body was here, but his mind had been somewhere else entirely, lost in a future that did not exist yet and might never exist at all. So when worry arises, the monk continued, you can ask yourself a simple question. Is there action I can take right now? If yes, take it. If no, let the worry go. Not because you do not care about your business, but because carrying unnecessary worry does not help your business. It only hurts you. That night, Fumio practiced this teaching. When his mind started spinning scenarios about the next day, he asked himself the question, is there action I can take right now? The answer was no. He had done what he could for today. The morning would bring opportunities for action, but right now, his job was simply to rest. And so, he practiced letting go, again and again. Each time his mind tried to pick up its burdens and carry them through the night. It was not easy. His mind had decades of practice at worrying. But each time he noticed himself worrying and consciously set it down, he felt a little lighter. Over time, Fumio learned to carry his business in a different way. He still planned carefully and made thoughtful decisions, but he stopped torturing himself with endless what-ifs and should-haves. When he made a trade, he did his best to make it well, and then he released it, trusting that he had acted with whatever wisdom he had at that moment. When things went wrong, as they sometimes did, he addressed them without adding layers of guilt and regret. When things went well, he enjoyed his success without immediately worrying about whether it would last. His business did not suffer from this change. In fact, it improved. He made better decisions when his mind was clear rather than clouded with anxiety. He saw opportunities he had missed when he was always looking backward or forward instead of at what was right in front of him. And most importantly, he was able to rest. Not just physical rest, though his sleep improved, but mental rest. The constant grinding exhaustion of carrying those invisible burdens finally eased. The teaching about right effort is one of the most practical gifts the Buddha offered. We live in a world that often rewards worry, that mistakes anxiety for conscientiousness, that confuses mental spinning with actual problem solving. We carry our concerns like badges of how much we care, how responsible we are, how seriously we take things. But the Buddha saw clearly that most of our mental suffering is optional. It is not caused by our circumstances, but by how we relate to our circumstances. You can care deeply about your life without carrying useless worry. You can be responsible without torturing yourself with regret. You can plan for the future without living there. The question to ask when your mind starts its worried spinning is always the same. Is there action I can take right now? If yes, take it with full presence and attention. If no, practice letting go. Not because you do not care, but because carrying what cannot be changed does not help anything or anyone. It only creates suffering where none is necessary. As you lie here breathing, notice what your mind is doing right now. Is it worrying about tomorrow? Replaying today? If so, can you gently ask yourself that question? Is there action I can take right now? And if the answer is no, can you practice the radical act of setting those thoughts down, just for now, just for this moment of rest? You can pick them up again if you need to in the morning. But right now, they serve no purpose except to keep you from the peace that is available when you stop carrying what does not need to be carried. In a small mountain village, there lived a woman named Aya, who was known for her beautiful garden. She had spent years cultivating it, learning which plants thrived in which spots, understanding the soil and the light and the flow of water. Her garden was a place of remarkable beauty, with flowers blooming in careful succession from early spring through late autumn, vegetables growing in abundant rows, fruit trees heavy with harvest. People would walk past her house just to admire what she had created. But Aya's relationship with her garden was complicated. She loved it, yes, but she also feared for it constantly. She would wake in the night, worrying about frost or drought or pests. She would stand at her window during storms, anxious about her plants. She could not leave the village for more than a day because she worried something would go wrong in her absence. Her garden, which should have been a source of joy, had become a source of constant anxiety. One summer, Aya's sister, who lived in a distant city, became ill and asked Aya to come care for her. Aya was torn. She loved her sister and wanted to help, but the thought of leaving her garden for weeks, perhaps months, filled her with dread. It was the height of the growing season. The vegetables needed daily attention. The flowers had to be dead-headed. Who would water everything correctly? Who would watch for problems? After much anguish, she decided she had to go. Family was more important than plants. She asked her neighbor, an elderly man named Isamu, if he would look after the garden while she was gone. Isamu agreed readily, though Aya noticed he did not seem particularly concerned about the detailed instructions she left him. He simply nodded and said, "I will do my best." The journey to the city and the weeks that followed caring for her sister were difficult. Aya's mind was divided. Part of her was present with her sister, tending to her needs, but another part was constantly in the garden, imagining all the things that might be going wrong. She would lie awake, picturing withered plants, overgrown weeds, vegetables rotting on the vine. She wrote long letters to Isamu with additional instructions, reminders, urgent suggestions. But caring for her sister also taught Aya something. Each day, she would do what needed to be done in that moment. Prepare food, give medicine, sit beside the sickbed, offer comfort. She could not control whether her sister would recover. She could only show up with love and do her best. There was a kind of peace in that, a simplicity. When she was washing her sister's face, that was all she was doing. When she was preparing soup, that was her whole world. The future was uncertain, but the present moment was clear. After 2 months, her sister recovered enough that Aya could return home. She traveled back with a mixture of eagerness and dread, wondering what state she would find her beloved garden in. When she arrived at her house and walked around to the back, she stopped in shock. The garden was thriving. It was not the same as when she left. Some plants had grown larger than she would have allowed. Others had gone to seed. The layout was slightly different, as if things had been moved or rearranged. But it was alive and healthy, perhaps even more vibrant than it had been under her anxious watch. Vegetables hung heavy on the vines. Flowers bloomed in profusion. Everything was a bit wilder, a bit less controlled, but full of life. Isamu came over when he saw her arrive. "Welcome back," he said with a gentle smile. "I hope the garden is acceptable." "It is more than acceptable," Aya said, still taking it all in. "But how? I thought surely without my constant attention, everything would suffer." Isamu chuckled. "I watered when the plants seemed thirsty. I pulled the most aggressive weeds. I harvested what was ready. But mostly, I let the garden be a garden. Plants know how to grow, Aya. They have been doing it since long before humans started arranging them in neat rows. Your job is not to force them to grow. Your job is to create conditions where they can grow and then trust them to do what they do naturally." Aya felt something shift in her understanding. She had been trying to control every aspect of the garden, believing that without her constant intervention, everything would fall apart. But the garden had its own wisdom, its own resilience. Her anxiety had not been helping her plants. If anything, it had been limiting them, keeping everything so controlled that there was no room for the garden's own wild vitality to express itself. "I spent 2 months worrying about this garden," she said quietly. "And all that worry accomplished nothing except making me miserable. The garden did not need my worry. It needed basic care and then space to be what it is. This is true of most things, Isamu replied. We confuse care with control. We think if we worry enough, plan enough, try to manage every detail, we can prevent anything bad from happening. But life is not something we can control. We can influence it, guide it, tend to it with love. But we cannot force it to be exactly what we want. And when we try, we exhaust ourselves and often damage the very things we are trying to protect. He gestured to a particularly wild-looking section of the garden. See there? Those flowers volunteered. They were not in your plan, but they came up on their own and I let them grow. They have attracted new pollinators that are helping all the other plants. Sometimes what we think is disorder is actually a different kind of order. One we did not design, but that works beautifully nonetheless. In the months that followed, Aya's relationship with her garden transformed completely. She still cared for it, still planted and weeded and harvested, but she did so with a lighter touch. She stopped trying to control every variable and instead began to work with the garden as a partner rather than as a dictator. She left some areas wilder, curious about what would emerge. She accepted that some plants would thrive and others would fail, and that both were natural parts of the cycle. She no longer lay awake worrying about frost or pests, trusting that she would deal with problems as they arose, rather than suffering through imaginary disasters before they happened. And remarkably, she found she enjoyed the garden more than she ever had. Without the burden of anxiety, she could actually be present to the beauty she had created. She could notice the way morning light caught on dewdrops, the sound of bees moving through the flowers, the satisfaction of harvesting vegetables at their peak. The garden became what it was meant to be, not a project that proved her worth or a thing that required her constant vigilance, but a living relationship that changed with the seasons and taught her daily about growth and letting go. This teaching about trust and allowing extends far beyond gardens. We often approach our lives, our relationships, our work, our very selves, as things that require constant anxious management. We believe that if we relax our vigilance for even a moment, everything will fall apart. But this belief creates a terrible tension, an exhausting stance of always having to hold everything together through sheer force of will and worry. The truth is that most things have their own wisdom, their own capacity to find their way. Children grow even when we are not hovering over every moment of their development. Relationships can be resilient even when we are not constantly monitoring and adjusting every interaction. Our bodies often heal themselves when we create conditions for healing and then get out of the way. Work can proceed even when we are not controlling every detail. This does not mean abandoning responsibility or care. Isamu did not ignore Aya's garden. He tended it, but he tended it with trust rather than fear. He did what was needed and then allowed the plants to be plants. There is a profound difference between care that comes from love and presence and care that comes from fear and the need to control. One nourishes, the other exhausts. As you rest here now, is there something in your life you have been trying to hold together through sheer force of worry? Some situation where you believe your anxiety is the only thing keeping disaster at bay? Can you consider the possibility that your worry is not actually helping? That whatever you are concerned about has its own resilience, its own capacity to find its way? Can you practice tending with love and then trusting, doing what you can do and then releasing what you cannot control? There was a scholar named Hiroshi who lived in the capital city and spent his days studying ancient texts. He had devoted his life to understanding philosophy and religion, accumulating vast knowledge about different schools of thought, different practices, different paths to wisdom. His home was filled with scrolls and books. He could discuss the finest points of Buddhist doctrine, debate the meanings of obscure passages, trace the lineages of various teachings. Other scholars respected him greatly for the breadth and depth of his learning. But despite all his knowledge, Hiroshi was not at peace. His mind was constantly active, always analyzing, always comparing, always seeking to understand more perfectly. He would lie awake at night, thinking about contradictions between different texts, puzzling over philosophical problems, trying to reconcile conflicting teachings. He had so much information about enlightenment, about peace, about liberation, but he had not found these things in his actual experience. It was as if he had collected many maps to a destination, but had never actually made the journey. One day, Hiroshi heard about a monk living in a small temple in the countryside, who was said to embody profound wisdom despite having no formal education. People spoke of this monk's presence, the peace that seemed to radiate from him, the simple clarity of his teaching. Hiroshi was both intrigued and somewhat skeptical. How could someone with no scholarly training truly understand the Dharma? Nevertheless, his curiosity overcame his skepticism, and he made the journey to the rural temple. When he arrived, he found the monk, whose name was Genki, working in a vegetable garden. The monk was elderly, his robes patched and faded, his hands rough from work. He looked up as Hiroshi approached and smiled warmly, gesturing for him to sit on a nearby bench. Hiroshi began by explaining who he was, describing his years of study, the texts he had mastered, the philosophical questions he had been contemplating. He spoke for some time about his knowledge and his continued searching, about his desire to understand enlightenment more perfectly. Genki listened patiently, occasionally nodding, his hands continuing to work with the soil, planting seeds with gentle attention. When Hiroshi finally paused, Genki asked simply, "Are you hungry?" Hiroshi was taken aback by the question. "I suppose I am, a little." "Come," Genki said, standing and brushing the soil from his hands. "Let us eat." He led Hiroshi to a small room where he prepared a simple meal of rice, vegetables, and tea. They ate together in silence. Hiroshi found himself becoming slightly uncomfortable with the quiet, wanting to return to the discussion of important philosophical matters. But something about Genki's peaceful presence made him hesitant to break the silence. After they finished eating, Genki asked, "How was the meal?" "It was good," Hiroshi replied. "Simple but nourishing." "And when you were eating, were you thinking about all your questions and texts and philosophical problems?" Hiroshi considered. "No, actually, I was just eating." "And in that moment of just eating, were you at peace?" Hiroshi realized with surprise that he had been. For those few minutes, his constantly churning mind had been quiet. He had been fully present with the taste of the food, the warmth of the tea, the simple act of satisfying his hunger. "The Buddha's teaching is not something to understand with the thinking mind," Genki said gently. "It is something to experience with your whole being. You have been trying to collect enlightenment in your head, like filling a library with books about water while remaining thirsty. But no amount of reading about water will quench your thirst. You must drink." He poured more tea for both of them. "Tell me, in all your years of study, in all those texts you have mastered, have you found the peace you are seeking?" Hiroshi felt something painful opening in his chest. "No," he admitted quietly. "I keep thinking that if I just understand one more thing, if I can just resolve one more contradiction, if I can just grasp the teaching more perfectly, then I will find peace. But the more I learn, the more questions I have. The more I understand intellectually, the further away peace seems to be." Genki nodded. "This is because you are looking in the wrong place. Peace is not at the end of understanding. It is here, in this moment, when the mind is not trying to grasp or figure out or acquire. It is what remains when thinking stops." "But how do I make thinking stop?" Hiroshi asked. "My mind never stops. It is always analyzing, always working." "You do not make it stop," Genki replied. "You simply stop feeding it. You stop believing that every thought requires your attention, that every question must be answered, that every problem must be solved right now. You practice coming back to what is actually here, the feeling of your breath, the sensation of your body sitting, the sound of birds in the garden, the taste of tea. These simple things that require no analysis, no understanding, no intellectual mastery. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where he had been working. I did not learn the Dharma from books. I learned it from planting seeds, from pulling weeds, from watching things grow and die and grow again. I learned it from being cold in winter and warm in summer, from being tired and resting, from being hungry and eating. The teaching is not separate from life. It is life itself, experienced directly without the filter of constant thinking about life. Hiroshi felt tears welling in his eyes, though he could not have said exactly why. Perhaps it was the recognition of how much time he had spent seeking something that was always right here. Perhaps it was the exhaustion of carrying so much knowledge without wisdom. Perhaps it was simply the relief of being with someone who saw through his elaborate constructions to the simple human being underneath, who just wanted to be at peace. "Stay here for a few days," Genki offered, not to learn more teachings, but to practice being without needing to understand everything. "Help me in the garden. Sit quietly. Eat your meals with full attention. Notice when your mind tries to turn everything into a philosophical problem to solve, and gently bring your attention back to what you are actually doing." Hiroshi stayed for 3 days. At first, it was difficult. His mind kept wanting to analyze everything, to turn even the simple act of pulling weeds into an intellectual exercise. But gradually, with Genki's patient guidance, he began to experience something he had only read about in all those texts. The peace of being fully present. The relief of not having to figure everything out. The quiet joy of doing simple things with complete attention. On the morning he was to leave, Genki walked with him to the road. "Your learning is not wasted," he said. "Knowledge has its place. But do not let your knowledge become a barrier between you and your actual experience. The map is not the territory. The menu is not the meal. The teaching about peace is not peace itself. Remember that you can always come back to the simplicity of this moment. Breathing, sensing, being. This is where peace lives. Not in your understanding of peace, but in the direct experience of being alive right now." Hiroshi returned to the city a changed man. He did not abandon his studies, but he no longer approached them with the desperate belief that understanding would save him. Instead, he began to practice what Genki had shown him. Throughout his day, he would pause from his scholarly work and simply be present. When he ate, he ate. When he walked, he walked. When he felt tired, he rested instead of pushing through with more analysis. His learning became deeper because it was grounded in actual experience rather than pure abstraction. And most importantly, he found the peace that had eluded him for so long, not at the end of his search, but in the simple willingness to stop searching and be where he was. This teaching is especially relevant in our modern world, where information is everywhere, and we are encouraged to constantly accumulate more knowledge, more understanding, more expertise. We can spend our lives collecting spiritual teachings, reading books about mindfulness and peace, understanding the theory of meditation without ever actually being still. We can become experts on enlightenment while remaining deeply unenlightened. We can know everything about peace while experiencing no peace at all. The Buddha did not teach a philosophy to believe in. He taught a practice to live. He did not want people to understand his words intellectually. He wanted them to test his teachings through direct experience and discover for themselves what was true. The proof of the teaching is not in how well you can explain it, but in how you actually live, in the quality of peace and compassion that naturally arises when you stop trying to grasp truth with your thinking mind and start experiencing it with your whole being. As you lie here, notice how your mind might be trying to analyze these stories, to extract lessons, to understand and categorize, and file away for future use. There is nothing wrong with this, but notice also what it feels like to simply let the words wash over you without grasping at them. What happens when you stop trying to understand and just allow yourself to receive? Can you experience these teachings not as information to collect, but as invitations to be present right now? This is the difference between knowing about rest and actually resting, between understanding peace and being peace. In a village surrounded by rice fields, there lived a farmer named Kaito who worked his family's land with dedication and skill. He had learned farming from his father, who had learned from his father before him, and Kaito took pride in maintaining the traditions that had sustained his family for generations. He worked hard, rising before dawn and laboring until the sun set, ensuring that every aspect of his farm was managed properly. But Kaito had a neighbor named Jiro, whose approach to farming was very different. Jiro's fields were not as meticulously organized. He sometimes let areas go fallow when Kaito believed they should be planted. He experimented with new crops, while Kaito stuck to what had always worked. He would take breaks during the day to rest in the shade, while Kaito continued working. From Kaito's perspective, Jiro was lazy and irresponsible, someone who did not take farming seriously. What frustrated Kaito most was that Jiro seemed perfectly happy. He would whistle while he worked. He spent time with his family. He helped neighbors with their projects, even when his own work was not finished. Meanwhile, Kaito was exhausted, resentful, and increasingly bitter about how much harder he worked than his neighbor, while Jiro enjoyed his life. One year, a traveling monk came to the village and stayed at the temple for a few weeks. Kaito found himself talking with her one evening after he had spent the entire day working in the fields. He complained about Jiro, about how unfair it was that someone who worked less seemed happier, about how his neighbor's casual approach to farming offended his sense of how things should be done. The monk listened carefully, then asked, "Does Jiro's way of farming affect your fields?" "No," Kaito admitted. "His land is his own. Does his harvest feed fewer people than yours?" Kaito paused. He had to admit that Jiro's harvests, while sometimes smaller, were adequate. His family was fed. He sold enough at market. "I suppose his harvest is sufficient for his needs," he said reluctantly. "So the problem is not that his farming affects you or fails to feed people," the monk observed. "The problem is that it offends your belief about how farming should be done. He is not following the rules that exist in your mind, and this makes you angry." Kaito felt defensive. "But there is a right way to farm. My family has done it the same way for generations. He is being disrespectful to the tradition." "Tell me," the monk said gently, "when you are lying awake at night feeling resentful about Jiro, does that resentment help your crops grow? When you spend your energy judging his choices, does that make your own work easier? When you carry anger about how he spends his afternoons, does that give you more peace?" Kaito was silent. The answer was obvious. His resentment accomplished nothing except making him miserable. "The Buddha taught about right intention," the monk continued. "We suffer not just from what happens to us, but from how we think about what happens, and especially from how we think about other people. You have created suffering for yourself by insisting that Jiro should farm the way you do, by making his different approach into evidence of his failure, by measuring his worth against your standards." She picked up a handful of soil and let it sift through her fingers. "This earth does not judge which farmer is more worthy. It receives the seed, provides nourishment, allows growth. The rain falls on both your fields and Jiro's without preference. The sun shines on both without measuring who deserves its light more. Only humans create these hierarchies, these judgments about whose way is right and whose is wrong." "But standards matter," Kaito protested. "If everyone farmed like Jiro, if no one worked hard or followed proper methods, but not everyone does farm like Jiro," the monk interrupted gently. "You farm like you. Jiro farms like Jiro. Other farmers farm in their own ways, and somehow the village is fed. Somehow life continues. The diversity of approaches creates resilience. What works for one person in one season might not work for another. What you call proper methods are one way, not the only way." She looked at him with compassion. "You are exhausting yourself, Kaito, not just with your physical work, which is honorable, but with the additional burden of carrying judgment and resentment. You are farming your land and also trying to farm Jiro's land in your mind, constantly measuring him, finding him lacking, spending energy on something that is not your responsibility and not within your control. Kaito felt something crack open inside him. She was right. He had been carrying this weight of judgment for years, and it had not changed Jiro at all. It had only made Kaito himself bitter and exhausted. He realized that he actually did not know Jiro's circumstances, his reasons, his inner life. He had been so busy judging that he had never simply seen his neighbor as another human being trying to live his life as best he could. "What should I do?" Kaito asked quietly. "Practice letting Jiro be Jiro," the monk replied. "When you notice yourself judging him, see if you can catch that moment and choose differently. Instead of following the judgment into resentment, simply observe. There is Jiro, farming in his way. No need to add commentary about right or wrong, lazy or hardworking, worthy or unworthy. Just let him be who he is. Focus your energy on your own fields, your own life, your own heart. You will find you have much more energy when you stop spending it on judging others." In the weeks that followed, Kaito practiced this teaching. It was not easy at first. His mind had well-worn paths of judgment that it wanted to follow whenever he saw Jiro. But each time he noticed himself slipping into criticism, he would pause and simply observe without adding the layer of judgment. Jiro is resting in the shade. Not Jiro is lazy. Just the fact, without the story he had been adding to it. Something unexpected happened. As he let go of his resentment toward Jiro, he began to see his neighbor differently. He noticed that Jiro's experiments with new crops sometimes succeeded, bringing diversity to the market. He saw that Jiro's willingness to help others built community in ways that Kaito's isolated hard work did not. He observed that Jiro's time with his family created a warmth in his household that was missing from Kaito's own home, where he was too tired and resentful to be fully present with his children. Most significantly, Kaito found that when he stopped spending his mental energy on judging Jiro, he had more energy for his own life. He could be present while working instead of fuming internally. He could enjoy his meals instead of replaying mental arguments about proper farming methods. He could sleep better because his mind was not churning with resentment. The quality of his own life improved dramatically, not because Jiro changed, but because Kaito stopped making Jiro's differences into a problem. One day, Kaito's plow broke at a critical time in the planting season. Before he could figure out what to do, Jiro appeared with his own plow. "I saw your difficulty," Jiro said simply. "Use mine until yours is repaired. My planting can wait a few days." Kaito felt shame wash over him as he accepted the offer. Here was his neighbor, whom he had judged so harshly, offering help without hesitation. He realized how much time he had wasted in resentment when he could have been building friendship. "I have been wrong about you," Kaito said quietly. "I have judged you without knowing you. I am sorry." Jiro smiled gently. "I knew you disapproved, but I also knew it was not really about me. You seemed so burdened, so serious. I hoped that one day you might find some ease. A man who cannot rest in the shade is suffering, even if his fields are perfect." This teaching about releasing judgment is one of the most liberating practices we can engage in. We spend enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy judging others, measuring them against our standards, finding them wanting, feeling superior or inferior, or resentful. And this judgment serves no useful purpose. It does not change other people. It does not make our own lives better. It only creates suffering for ourselves and separation from others. When we practice letting people be who they are, when we release our insistence that they conform to our ideas of how they should be, something profound happens. We discover that the energy we were spending on judgment becomes available for our own lives. We find that we can be more present, more peaceful, more genuinely ourselves, when we are not constantly comparing and measuring and finding fault. We open the possibility of real connection with others when we meet them as they are, rather than as we think they should be. This does not mean we cannot have preferences or boundaries. We can still choose who we spend time with, what behaviors we accept in our own lives, but we can do this from a place of clarity rather than judgment. We can say, "This person's way is not my way," without needing to make them wrong. We can set boundaries without resentment. We can disagree without making the disagreement into a referendum on someone's worth as a human being. As you rest here, is there someone you have been judging? Someone whose different way of being has become a burden you carry in your mind? Can you practice, just for tonight, letting them be who they are? Not approving or disapproving, just acknowledging that they are walking their own path, making their own choices, learning their own lessons. Can you take the energy you have been spending on judgment and let it return to you, available for your own peace, your own rest? There was a teacher named Suki who ran a small school in her village, teaching children to read and write and understand the world. She loved her work and devoted herself completely to her students, wanting each child to reach their full potential. But Suki had a problem that troubled her deeply. There was one student, a boy named Yuki, who frustrated her endlessly. He was bright but lazy, quick to understand but slow to apply himself, capable of beautiful work but satisfied with mediocre effort. Suki tried everything. She encouraged him, praised his potential, challenged him with harder work, gave him extra attention. Nothing seemed to motivate him to try harder. Meanwhile, other students who had less natural ability but more dedication progressed further. Suki found herself becoming increasingly frustrated with Yuki, disappointed in him, resentful of his wasted potential. She would lie awake thinking about what else she could try, feeling like she was failing as a teacher because she could not inspire this one student to care more. One evening, Suki attended a talk given by a visiting teacher at the local temple. The teacher spoke about the Buddhist concept of attachment, explaining how we create suffering for ourselves by clinging to how we want things to be rather than accepting how they are. Someone in the audience asked, "But how do we reconcile acceptance with trying to help people change for the better? If we accept people as they are, does that mean we stop trying to help them grow?" The teacher smiled. This is a profound question. True acceptance does not mean indifference. It means seeing clearly what is actually here, without the distortion of our wishes and demands. From that clear seeing, we can offer appropriate help, but we do not make our own peace dependent on whether the help is received in the way we want. She continued, "Imagine you plant a seed. You prepare the soil, provide water, ensure adequate sunlight. These are the conditions that allow growth. But you cannot make the seed grow. Growth happens according to the seed's own nature, its own timing. If you stand over the seed, anxiously demanding that it sprout according to your schedule, you do not help it grow faster. You only create suffering for yourself. Your job is to provide good conditions and then trust the process." Suki felt these words land in her heart. She realized she had been trying to make Yuki grow according to her timeline, her vision of his potential. She had been so attached to the outcome, to him becoming what she thought he should be, that she had made his progress into a measure of her own worth as a teacher. When he did not change as she wanted, she took it as personal failure. She had been standing over the seed, anxiously demanding growth, rather than trusting that she had done her part by providing good conditions. The next day, Suki approached her, teaching differently. She still offered Yuki the same opportunities, the same encouragement, the same resources, but she released her attachment to how he responded. She did her job with care and then let go of demanding a particular result. She stopped making his choices into evidence of her failure or his. She simply met him where he was, offered what she could offer, and trusted that he would grow in his own way and time. Something unexpected happened. Without the weight of her disappointment and frustration, Suki could actually see Yuki more clearly. She noticed that while he did not push himself academically, he was often the first to help another student who was struggling. She saw that he had a gift for making the other children laugh when the day felt long and difficult. She observed that he moved through the world with an ease that her more anxious, driven students lacked. She realized that Yuki might indeed have academic potential that he was not fully using, but he also had other qualities that were already developed. Perhaps his path was different from what she had imagined for him. Perhaps his growth would come at a different pace, in different areas. Perhaps her role was simply to keep the door open, to provide good conditions, and to trust that he would walk through that door when and if it was right for him. Years later, long after Yuki had left her school, Suki heard that he had become a healer, someone who worked with herbs and brought comfort to the sick. People spoke of his gentle presence, his ability to put patients at ease, his patience with suffering. He had found his path, developed his gifts, grown into himself, just not in the way or on the timeline that Suki had once demanded. I learned something important from that boy, Suki would tell her new students when they asked her advice about teaching. I learned that our job is to offer what we can offer with love and skill, and then to release our grip on the outcome. We plant seeds, we water them, we provide light, but the growing happens in its own time, according to a wisdom we cannot control. When we make our peace dependent on seeing immediate results, we suffer unnecessarily, and we often miss what is actually happening right in front of us. This teaching about non-attachment applies to every area of life where we interact with others. Parents with children, teachers with students, friends with friends, partners with each other. We love people. We want good things for them. We try to help them grow and be happy. But when we become attached to them, changing in specific ways on specific timelines, we create suffering for ourselves and often for them as well. Our love becomes conditional. Our help becomes controlling. Our care becomes burden. True love, true care, offers what it can offer and then opens its hands. It provides good conditions without demanding particular results. It trusts that people have their own wisdom, their own timing, their own path. This does not mean we become passive or indifferent. We can still offer guidance, share wisdom, provide support, but we do it from a place of freedom rather than attachment, from generosity rather than neediness, from trust rather than fear. When we release our attachment to how others should grow or change, we often discover that we can actually be more helpful. We can see them more clearly when we are not looking through the distortion of our own wishes. We can offer what they actually need rather than what we think they need. And we can maintain our own peace regardless of whether they accept what we offer or not. As you breathe here in the quiet, is there someone you have been trying to change? Someone whose growth you have been anxiously monitoring? Can you practice offering your help, your love, your support, and then opening your hands? Can you trust that they have their own wisdom, their own path, their own timing? This is not giving up on them. This is actually the deepest form of respect, believing that they can find their way even if it is not the way you would choose for them. In a coastal town, there lived a woman named Chio who made her living creating beautiful paper lanterns. She would carefully cut the paper, paint delicate designs, assemble the frames with precision. Her lanterns were works of art, sought after for festivals and celebrations. People would display them with pride, marveling at the intricacy of her work. But Chio had a secret sorrow that she carried every day. 10 years earlier, her daughter had left home after a bitter argument. They had not spoken since. Chio had replayed that argument in her mind thousands of times, thinking of what she should have said, what she could have done differently, how she might have prevented the rupture. She held on to her hurt and anger, nursing it like a precious possession, even as it poisoned her peace and stole her joy. Every lantern she made, she imagined her daughter seeing it and realizing what she had lost by leaving. Every festival, she hoped her daughter would return and apologize. But year after year passed with no word, no reconciliation, just the growing weight of resentment that Chio carried like a stone in her chest. One day, a fire broke out in Chio's workshop. She managed to escape safely, but the building and everything in it burned to the ground. All her tools, her materials, her finished lanterns, the workshop her father had built, gone. She stood in the street watching the flames, feeling as if her entire life was being consumed. In the days that followed, neighbors and friends came to help. They offered her a temporary place to work. They brought her materials and tools to replace what had been lost. They placed orders for new lanterns to help her rebuild her business. Chio was moved by this outpouring of support, but she also felt something surprising. Underneath the grief of losing her workshop, there was an unexpected lightness. She realized that in losing everything physical, she had been forced to let go in a way she had not been able to do voluntarily. The fire had taken her possessions, yes, but it had also somehow burned away some of the rigid structures in her mind. Standing in front of the ashes of her old life, she suddenly saw how much energy she had been spending holding on to the past, feeding her resentment, rehearsing her hurt. The fire had shown her how quickly and completely everything could change, how temporary all things were, how much she had been taking for granted. That night, she wrote a letter to her daughter. Not the letter she had composed in her mind hundreds of times, full of accusations and demands for apology. Instead, she wrote simply and honestly. She said she missed her daughter. She said she was sorry for her part in their estrangement. She said that life was short and uncertain, and she did not want to spend any more of it separated by old anger. She said that whatever had happened between them, she loved her daughter and would welcome her back with open arms if she ever wanted to come home, but that she was also releasing any expectation that this would happen. She was letting go. She sent the letter not knowing if it would be received or read, not expecting anything in return, but the act of writing it, of releasing her grip on the old hurt, lifted something from her chest. She felt lighter than she had in years. Her daughter did not respond immediately, and Chio practiced accepting that. She rebuilt her workshop slowly and with help. She created new lanterns. She found herself more present with the friends and neighbors who had supported her, more grateful for what she had rather than bitter about what she had lost. The weight of her old resentment was gone, not because her daughter had returned, but because she had finally set it down. 3 months later, her daughter appeared at her door. They embraced and wept. There was much to talk about, old wounds to acknowledge, forgiveness to offer and receive on both sides. But the reunion was possible because Chio had already done the inner work of letting go. She had released her grip on how things should have been, on who should apologize first, on her demand that her daughter recognize her mistakes before reconciliation could happen. In releasing all of that, she had created space for something new to emerge. The fire took everything from me, Chio told her daughter as they sat together in the rebuilt workshop. And in doing so, it gave me back what mattered most. It showed me how much energy I had been spending holding on to the past. It taught me that letting go is not about forgetting or saying that nothing happened. It is about releasing the grip of resentment so that I can be free to live now, in this moment, with an open heart. The Buddha taught extensively about letting go, not because he wanted people to become passive or to accept harmful situations, but because he saw clearly how much we suffer by clinging to what cannot be held. We cling to pleasant experiences, wanting them to last forever. We cling to our versions of how things should be, demanding that reality conform to our expectations. We cling to our hurts and grievances, replaying them endlessly, adding interest to the original pain until we are buried under the weight of accumulated resentment. But everything in life is impermanent. Experiences arise and pass. People change. Circumstances shift. Relationships evolve or end. When we try to hold on to things that are naturally flowing, we create enormous suffering for ourselves. It is like trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The tighter we grip, the more quickly it slips away, and we are left only with the tension of our grasping. Letting go is not a single event, but a continuous practice. We must let go again and again, moment by moment, as new things arise that we want to cling to, as old hurts resurface, as our minds try to grasp at permanence in an impermanent world. But each time we practice releasing our grip, we become a little freer, a little lighter, a little more able to meet life as it actually is, rather than fighting for it to be what we wish it were. This does not mean we stop caring, or that we become cold and detached. True letting go is warm and alive. It allows us to love more fully, because our love is not twisted up with grasping and fear of loss. It allows us to act more effectively, because our actions are not motivated by desperate clinging, but by clear seeing of what is needed. It allows us to grieve losses without being destroyed by them, to experience pain without adding layers of resistance that turn pain into suffering. As you lie here in the darkness, breathing slowly, can you notice if there is anything you are gripping tightly? Some hurt from the past that you are still rehearsing? Some expectation about how things should be that reality is not meeting? Some pleasant experience that has passed that you are trying to hold on to in memory? Can you practice, just for this moment, softening your grip? Not forcing yourself to let go completely, but just experimenting with what it feels like to hold things a little more lightly? You might be surprised by how much freer you feel when you stop using all your energy to hold on. There was a young man named Rio who lived in a mountain village and worked as a woodcutter. He was strong and skilled, able to fell trees with precision and carry heavy loads down the mountain paths. His work was important to the village, providing fuel for fires and material for building. He took pride in his strength and his ability to do this demanding work. But Rio had a secret fear that troubled him deeply. He was terrified of appearing weak or incapable. Whenever he felt tired, he would push through, refusing to rest. When other woodcutters took breaks, he continued working, proving his endurance. When he was sick or injured, he would hide it, not wanting anyone to see him as less than strong. This relentless pushing had consequences. His body was accumulating injuries that did not heal properly. His exhaustion was becoming chronic. But he could not stop, could not allow himself to be seen as anything other than completely capable. One winter, Rio was working high on the mountain when a severe storm came in faster than expected. He should have descended immediately, but he wanted to finish cutting one more tree to prove he could complete his quota despite the weather. As he was making the final cuts, his exhausted body betrayed him. His grip slipped, the axe glanced off the tree, and he fell awkwardly, injuring his leg badly. He tried to stand and could not. The storm was getting worse, snow falling heavily, visibility dropping. He was alone on the mountain with an injury that prevented him from walking, and no one knew exactly where he was. For the first time in his adult life, Rio felt completely helpless. All his strength, all his fierce independence meant nothing in this moment. He could not save himself through force of will. As the cold began to seep into his body, Rio felt fear unlike anything he had known. But underneath the fear, something else emerged. A strange calm, a recognition that he had been fighting reality for years, pretending he was invincible, denying his own limits, exhausting himself trying to be something no human actually is, perfectly strong, never needing help, always capable. And now, reality was showing him the truth he had been avoiding. He was human, he was vulnerable, he had limits, and there was nothing he could do to change that fact. He called out into the storm, not knowing if anyone could hear him, not trying to sound strong or capable, just crying for help like a frightened child. He called until his voice was hoarse, and then he simply lay in the snow, accepting that he might die here, that his strength had not been enough, that he needed help he might not receive. But then, through the swirling snow, he heard voices. The other woodcutters had noticed he had not returned when the storm began. They had organized a search party, refusing to leave him on the mountain alone. They found him, carried him down, treated his injury, brought him to safety. And Rio, who had spent years trying to prove he needed no one, felt tears streaming down his face, not from pain but from overwhelming gratitude and the humbling recognition of how much he actually needed other people. During the weeks of recovery that followed, Rio was forced to receive help in ways that once would have humiliated him. Neighbors brought him food, friends helped with tasks he could not manage. His own body required rest, and there was no way to push through or prove his strength. He had to simply be vulnerable, to accept care, to allow himself to be weak. And something remarkable happened. The people around him did not see his vulnerability as shameful. They did not think less of him. If anything, they seemed to feel closer to him, as if his willingness to need them created a bridge that his previous fierce independence had prevented. His mother, bringing him soup one evening, said something that pierced his heart. "I have been waiting for years to help you, to take care of you. You always pushed me away, always had to be so strong. But this, you letting me help you now, this is a gift you are giving me." Rio realized he had been so afraid of being seen as weak that he had denied others the joy of helping him, the connection that comes from giving and receiving care. He had been carrying the exhausting belief that needing help was failure, that vulnerability was shameful, that he had to be completely self-sufficient to have value. But here, in his forced helplessness, he was discovering something the Buddha had taught. That our interconnection is not weakness but truth. That no one is actually self-sufficient. That we all need each other. And this need is not something to be ashamed of, but something to be embraced. An old monk who sometimes visited the village came to see Rio one afternoon. They sat together quietly, and then the monk said, "You have been given a profound teaching by this accident. You have learned that strength and weakness are not opposites but partners. True strength includes the ability to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to acknowledge limits. The kind of strength you are trying to embody, always pushing, never resting, denying vulnerability, that is actually a form of weakness. It is fragile, requiring constant effort to maintain, always one accident away from collapse." He poured tea for both of them, his old hands steady. The Buddha spoke of the middle way, the path between extremes. Not too tight, not too loose, not endless striving without rest, but also not collapse into laziness. Not fierce independence that denies our need for others, but also not helpless dependence that denies our own agency. The middle way understands that we are both strong and vulnerable, both capable and limited, both independent and deeply interconnected. When we try to be only one side of these pairs, we create imbalance and suffering. Rio listened with his whole being. "So, accepting my limitations is not giving up?" "No," the monk replied. "Accepting your limitations is wisdom. It allows you to work skillfully within the reality of being human rather than exhausting yourself fighting against that reality. A tree that is too rigid breaks in the wind. A tree that bends, that acknowledges the force of the storm and yields to it, survives. Your body was trying to tell you for years that you needed to rest, to receive help, to honor your limits. You were too rigid, too determined to be only strong. And so you broke. Now you have the opportunity to learn flexibility, to discover that yielding is not defeat, but wisdom. As Rio healed, he brought this teaching into his work. He still cut wood with skill and care, but he also rested when he was tired. He asked for help when he needed it. He took days off when he was sick. He allowed others to see his limitations without shame. And remarkably, he found he could work more sustainably, with more joy, more present to each moment, rather than always pushing towards some imagined standard of perfect strength. His relationships deepened as well. When he stopped pretending to be invulnerable, people could actually reach him. They shared their own struggles with him, trusting that he would understand. The village became more connected as people acknowledged their mutual need for each other, rather than everyone pretending to be completely self-sufficient. Rio's vulnerability, his willingness to be seen in his need, had created permission for others to be vulnerable too. This teaching about accepting our human limitations is especially important in cultures that glorify constant productivity, that equate worth with capability, that see needing help as weakness. We push ourselves beyond healthy limits, ignore our body's signals, sacrifice our well-being to prove our strength or our dedication. And we suffer tremendously from this. The truth is that we are limited beings. We have bodies that get tired, that need rest, that age, and sometimes break. We have emotional capacities that can be overwhelmed. We have mental energy that gets depleted, We need food and sleep and help and connection. None of this is shameful. None of this makes us weak or inadequate. This is simply what it means to be human. When we accept our limitations with compassion instead of fighting them with shame, we can actually work with them skillfully. We can rest before we collapse. We can ask for help before crisis forces us to. We can honor our needs instead of overriding them until our bodies or minds rebel. And paradoxically, this acceptance of limitation often allows us to accomplish more because we are working sustainably rather than constantly depleting ourselves. As you rest here, breathing slowly and deeply, can you bring some gentleness to any place where you are being harsh with yourself? Any way you are demanding that you be more than human, that you need no rest, that you should be able to push through without limit? Can you acknowledge that it is okay to be tired, okay to need help, okay to have limits? This acceptance is not resignation. It is the beginning of truly taking care of yourself, of working with reality rather than against it. In a village known for its ceramics, there lived a young potter named Ayame, who was considered extraordinarily talented. She could throw perfect forms, create glazes of stunning beauty, fire her kiln with precision. Her work was purchased by wealthy collectors and displayed in prominent places. People spoke of her as a prodigy, blessed with natural gifts that others could only envy. But Ayame carried a heavy burden that no one could see. She was convinced that her worth as a person was entirely tied to her pottery. When she created something beautiful, she felt valuable, worthy, deserving of existence. When a piece failed or did not meet her standards, she felt worthless, convinced that without her ability to make perfect pottery, she was nothing. Her entire sense of self rose and fell with the success of her work. This meant that pottery, which should have been a joy, had become a source of constant anxiety. Each piece she made carried the weight of her entire self-worth. She could not experiment or play or risk failure, because failure meant not just a broken pot, but proof of her worthlessness. She worked with grim determination rather than creative freedom, always trying to prove her value through the next perfect piece. One season, Ayame developed a tremor in her hands. It was slight, barely noticeable to others, but to someone whose entire identity was built on precise craftwork, it was devastating. She could no longer throw the perfectly symmetrical forms she was known for. Her hands betrayed her at crucial moments, creating wobbles and imperfections she could not control. She tried to hide the tremor, tried to work through it, but it only worsened under the pressure of her anxiety. Ayame fell into despair. If she could not make perfect pottery, who was she? What was her value? She stopped working, stopped leaving her house, sank into a darkness that felt endless. Her friends tried to help, but she pushed them away, convinced that once they saw she was not the talented potter they thought she was, they would abandon her. One day, her old neighbor, a woman named Fumiko, who had known Ayame since she was a child, came to visit. She did not try to convince Ayame that her pottery would return or that the tremor would heal. Instead, she simply sat with her and after a long silence said, "When you were a little girl, before you ever touched clay, I loved you. Do you remember that?" Ayame looked at her, confused. "I do not understand what you mean. I loved you when you were 5 years old, and you would run through the village laughing." Fumiko continued. "I loved you when you were 7, and you would help me feed the chickens. I loved you when you were 10, and you would sit on my porch and tell me stories. Your pottery is beautiful, and I am proud of your skill. But my love for you has never been about what you can make with your hands. It has been about who you are, about the light in your eyes, about your presence in the world." Tears began streaming down Ayame's face. "But if I cannot make pottery, I am nothing. I have nothing to offer. I have no worth." Fumiko shook her head gently. "You have confused what you do with who you are. They are not the same thing. Your pottery is something you create, but it is not you. You existed before you learned to throw clay. You would exist even if you never touched it again. Your value is not something you earn through accomplishment. It is inherent. It belongs to you simply because you are alive, because you are here. She took Ayame's trembling hands in her own steady ones. I know our world tells you differently. I know we celebrate people for what they achieve, what they produce, what they can do. But the Buddha taught something deeper. He taught that every being has Buddha nature, an inherent worth and wholeness that exists independent of accomplishment. You are valuable not because of what you make, but because of what you are, a conscious being capable of awareness, of kindness, of presence. These qualities do not depend on your hands working perfectly. They are here regardless. Over the weeks that followed, Fumiko helped Ayame begin to separate her identity from her craft. They would go on walks, and Fumiko would point out moments of beauty that Ayame's hands had not created. The sunrise, the sound of birdsong, the taste of tea. She was helping Ayame see that there was a whole life of experience and value that existed beyond her pottery. Slowly, gradually, Ayame began to experiment with the radical idea that she might be okay even without perfect pottery. She started to notice that people still wanted to be around her, that conversations still happened, that the world continued to include her even when she was not producing anything. Her nephew still ran to greet her with joy. Her friends still shared their troubles with her, trusting her wisdom. She still felt moved by beauty, still could offer kindness, still experienced the miracle of being alive. Eventually, she returned to pottery, but with a completely different relationship to it. She worked with her trembling hands, creating pieces that were imperfect, asymmetrical, uniquely marked by her body's current reality. And she found that she could love these pieces too, not despite their imperfections, but because of them. They were honest. They were real. They carried the story of her humanity in a way her perfect pieces never had. Some people still preferred her older work, and that was fine. Others were drawn to these new pieces, finding in them a quality of authenticity and vulnerability that touched them deeply. But most importantly, Ayame's piece no longer depended on how her work was received. She had discovered that her worth was not on the pottery wheel. It was in her being itself, unchanging and complete, regardless of what her hands could or could not create. This teaching about inherent worth versus earned worth is foundational to finding peace in life. We live in a world that constantly measures and ranks, that tells us our value is determined by our productivity, our achievements, our success by external standards. We internalize this message deeply, building our entire sense of self on accomplishments that are inherently unstable, that can be lost to injury or age, or changing circumstances, or simple bad luck. But the Buddha taught something revolutionary. He taught that our fundamental nature, what he called Buddha nature, is already complete, already whole, already valuable. It does not need to be earned or proven. It cannot be increased by success or diminished by failure. It simply is. When we understand this deeply, not just intellectually but in the core of our being, we become free to engage with life from a place of wholeness rather than deficiency, from creativity rather than desperate proving, from joy rather than fear. This does not mean we stop working or creating or striving, but we do these things from a different place, not to earn our worth, but to express the fullness that is already here. Not to prove we deserve to exist, but to offer our gifts to the world from the abundance of our inherent completeness. The difference is subtle but profound. One approach exhausts us and can never satisfy because no accomplishment is ever enough to finally prove our worth. The other allows us to rest even as we work, to create from fullness rather than emptiness, to find peace regardless of outcomes. As you breathe here in the quiet darkness, can you touch into this truth? That you are valuable not because of what you have accomplished or what you can do, but simply because you are here, because you are a conscious being, because you exist. Your worth is not something you need to earn with every breath. It is already given, already complete. Can you rest in that knowing, even if just for a moment? There was a village elder named Takeshi who had spent his life acquiring wisdom through study and experience. He was known throughout the region as someone who could offer guidance on difficult matters, who understood both practical affairs and deeper questions of meaning. People came from distant places to seek his counsel, and he took pride in his ability to help them find their way. But Takeshi had a student named Ichiro who frustrated him greatly. Ichiro was earnest and dedicated, but he asked endless questions, many of which seemed to Takeshi to be repetitive or obvious. He would explain a concept, and Ichiro would nod with understanding. But then the next day, Ichiro would ask about the same concept as if he had never heard it before. Takeshi would patiently explain again, but he felt his patience wearing thin. Why could this student not simply understand and retain what he was taught? One day, after Ichiro had asked for the third time about a teaching Takeshi had already explained twice, the elder felt his frustration boiling over. "Why do you not remember what I have taught you?" he demanded, his voice sharp with irritation. "I have explained this clearly, more than once. Are you not paying attention? Are you not trying?" Ichiro's face flushed with shame. "I am trying, teacher. I am paying attention. But sometimes when I think I understand, and then I go home and try to apply the teaching to my life, I find I am confused again. The understanding I had in the moment of hearing it seems to slip away when I am alone with my own problems." Takeshi felt his anger rising further, but then he saw tears welling in Ichiro's eyes, and something in him paused. He took a breath and asked more gently, "Tell me what happens when you try to apply what I have taught." Ichiro explained that he would understand the teaching in the abstract, but when he was actually in the middle of a difficult situation, with all his emotions activated and old patterns triggered, the teaching would seem distant and unhelpful. He would lose touch with the clarity he had felt during their discussions, and so he would come back, hoping that hearing it again might help it sink deeper, might make it more accessible when he truly needed it. Takeshi sat with this for a long moment. He realized that he had been teaching from a place of ego, taking pleasure in his role as the wise teacher, the one with answers, the one who could solve problems with elegant explanations. And when Ichiro did not retain his teachings perfectly, Takeshi had taken it as a failure that reflected poorly on his abilities as a teacher. He had made Ichiro's learning process about himself, about his own need to be seen as effective and wise. "I have been a poor teacher," Takeshi said quietly. "Not because my explanations were unclear, but because I forgot that real learning does not happen in a single hearing. Transformation does not occur because someone explains truth to you once or twice, or even 100 times. It happens slowly, through repeated encounter with teachings, through patient practice, through falling down and getting up and trying again." He looked at Ichiro with new eyes, seeing not a slow student but a dedicated practitioner who was honestly grappling with the difficulty of integrating wisdom into lived experience. The Buddha himself taught the same core truths over and over in different ways to the same students, because he understood that hearing something once, or even understanding it intellectually, is very different from embodying it so deeply that it is available to you when you need it most. Takeshi continued, "I have been impatient with your process because it threatened my image of myself as a teacher whose words immediately transform people. But that is my ego, my attachment to a certain outcome. Real teaching is not about impressing people with profound explanations. It is about patiently walking alongside them as they slowly integrate wisdom into their being, which takes time, which requires repetition, which includes forgetting and remembering and forgetting again." From that day forward, Takeshi changed his approach. When Ichiro asked the same question multiple times, he no longer saw it as failure. He saw it as part of the natural process of deep learning. Sometimes he would answer the question the same way. Sometimes he would answer it differently, offering a new angle that might reach Ichiro where the previous explanation had not. And most importantly, he released his attachment to Ichiro understanding on any particular timeline. He simply offered what he could offer with patience and let Ichiro's learning unfold at its own pace. Years later, Ichiro became a respected teacher in his own right. People would comment on his patience with students, his willingness to explain things multiple times without frustration, his understanding that learning is not a linear process but a spiral, returning again and again to the same teachings, but each time from a slightly different place, each time with a bit more depth. When asked where he learned such patience, he would credit Takeshi, who had learned to see repetition not as failure, but as the natural rhythm of genuine transformation. The Buddha taught about patience as one of the essential qualities to cultivate on the path. Not just patience with external circumstances, though that is important, but patience with ourselves and others as we all slowly grow and change. We expect transformation to be dramatic and immediate. We hear a teaching and think we should be able to apply it perfectly from that moment forward. We decide to change a habit and expect ourselves to never slip back into old patterns. We try to help others and become frustrated when they do not immediately embody the wisdom we have shared. But real change is rarely like this. It is more like water slowly wearing away stone, or a path through the forest that becomes clearer only through many repeated walkings. We hear a teaching, we forget it, we remember it again. We practice a new way of being. We fall back into old patterns. We begin again. We offer help to someone. They do not change. We continue to offer help anyway, trusting that seeds planted now might germinate in their own time. This kind of patience requires us to release our attachment to seeing immediate results. It requires trust that growth is happening even when we cannot see it, that seeds are germinating beneath soil that looks empty, that transformation is occurring in times and ways we cannot measure or control. It requires humility about our own pace of learning and compassion for the pace of others. When we can bring this patient, spacious quality to our own process and to our relationships with others, something remarkable happens. The urgency and frustration that so often accompany our efforts to change or help others dissolve. We can show up with consistency rather than intensity. We can offer what we can offer without demanding particular results. We can trust the slow, organic process of growth that is always happening beneath the surface of things. As you rest here, breathing slowly and deeply, can you bring this patient quality to yourself? Can you acknowledge that you are in process, that your growth and healing and transformation are unfolding at their own pace? Can you release the demand that you be further along than you are, more healed, more wise, more together? Can you trust that where you are right now is exactly where you need to be, that you are learning what you need to learn, that the path is unfolding as it should? There was a merchant who traveled between villages, and on one of his journeys, he came across a monastery where he decided to rest for the night. The head monk invited him to join the evening meditation, and though the merchant had never meditated before, he agreed out of courtesy. He sat with the monks in their meditation hall, trying to still his mind as they seemed to be doing. But the merchant's mind was anything but still. It raced with thoughts about the goods he was carrying, the prices he hoped to get, the route he would take tomorrow, the weather, his family, his worries, his plans. He opened his eyes and saw the monks sitting in perfect stillness, and he felt frustrated with himself. Why could he not quiet his mind like they could? What was wrong with him that he could not achieve even a few moments of peace? After the meditation, the merchant approached the head monk and confessed his failure. I tried to meditate as you do, but my mind would not be still. Thoughts came one after another, an endless stream. I could not achieve the peace you seem to have. The old monk smiled gently. Tell me, when you saw your mind full of thoughts, what did you do? I tried to push the thoughts away, to force my mind to be quiet, but the more I tried, the more thoughts came. Ah, the monk said, you were fighting with your own mind. This is like trying to smooth water by hitting it with your hand. The very effort to force stillness creates more disturbance. He gestured to a small pond near the retent, meditation hall. Come, let me show you something. They walked to the pond, and the monk picked up a stone and tossed it into the water. Ripples spread across the surface, disturbing the reflection of the sky. See how the water is disturbed? Now watch what happens when we simply leave it alone. They stood together in silence, watching. Gradually, the ripples settled. The water became still again, reflecting the sky with perfect clarity. The monk had done nothing but wait. The water's natural state was stillness. When left alone, it returned to that state on its own. Your mind is like this water, the monk explained. Its natural state is actually peaceful. But when we aggressively try to force it to be still, when we fight with our thoughts, when we judge ourselves for having a busy mind, we create more disturbance. We throw stone after stone into the water and then wonder why it will not be calm. So what should I do? The merchant asked. Do less, not more. When you sit in meditation, thoughts will come. This is natural. You do not need to fight them or push them away. Simply notice them, acknowledge their presence, and then gently return your attention to your breath. Again and again, without judgment, without frustration, just noticing and returning. The thoughts will gradually settle on their own, like the water, when you stop adding energy to them. The merchant tried again that evening. With this new understanding, thoughts still came, many thoughts, but instead of fighting them, he simply noticed them and returned to his breath. It was not perfect. His mind still wandered constantly, but he found that there were brief moments, just seconds at a time, where his mind settled, where he experienced the peace beneath the thoughts, and he realized that this was enough. He did not need to achieve some dramatic state of perfect stillness. These small moments of peace, strung together like beads on a thread, were themselves valuable. This teaching about gentleness with ourselves is perhaps one of the most important and most forgotten aspects of spiritual practice. We approach meditation, mindfulness, personal growth with the same aggressive striving we bring to everything else in our lives. We want to achieve peace, to master our minds, to become enlightened, and in that very striving, we create the opposite of what we seek. The path is not about forcing or achieving or conquering. It is about allowing, about creating space, about learning to meet whatever arises with acceptance rather than resistance. When we stop fighting with our own experience, when we stop judging ourselves for having thoughts or feelings or struggles, we discover that peace was never something we needed to create. It was always here, waiting beneath the turbulence we were creating through our own efforts to control everything. This does not mean we become passive or give up on growth, but we grow in the way a plant grows, not through force but through patient, nourishing of conditions. We show up for our practice with consistency and gentleness. We notice when we have wandered and return without judgment. We meet our difficulties with compassion rather than criticism. And slowly, so slowly we might not even notice the change happening, we transform. As your body continues to settle into rest, as your breath deepens and slows, notice what it feels like to stop trying to make anything happen. Not trying to fall asleep, not trying to empty your mind, not trying to be anywhere other than where you are. Just allowing this moment to be exactly what it is, with you exactly as you are. This allowing, this gentle acceptance, this is the doorway to the deepest rest. In the final years of his life, the Buddha gathered his disciples and offered them his last teachings. He knew his time was ending, and he wanted to leave them with the most essential wisdom. One of the things he emphasized again and again was this: be a lamp unto yourself. Do not look for refuge in anyone but yourself. This was not a call to isolation or self-sufficiency in the way we often think of it. It was a teaching about trusting your own experience, your own awareness, your own capacity to find truth. The Buddha understood that no teacher, no matter how wise, could give you enlightenment. No teaching, no matter how profound, could substitute for your own direct experience of waking up. Each person must walk the path themselves, must discover truth through their own investigation and practice. There was once a student who spent years studying with different teachers, always hoping to find the one who would finally give him the complete teaching, the perfect instruction that would unlock enlightenment. He would stay with the teacher for a while, learn their methods, and then move on when he did not achieve the dramatic transformation he expected. He was always seeking the next teacher, the next technique, the next secret that would finally deliver what he sought. One day he came to a very old teacher who lived simply in a small hermitage. The student explained his search, the many teachers he had studied with, the practices he had tried, his continued seeking for the teaching that would finally work. The old teacher listened patiently, and when the student finished, he said simply, "You already have everything you need." The student felt frustrated. "But I do not feel enlightened. I still struggle. I still suffer. Clearly I am missing something, some key teaching that I have not yet found." The old teacher smiled. "What you are missing is not out there in some teaching or technique. What you are missing is the willingness to truly engage with the teachings you already have, to commit to a practice long enough to let it transform you, to trust your own capacity to find your way." He continued, "You have been like a person digging for water who digs a little here, then moves and digs a little there, then moves again, never staying in one place long enough to actually reach the water. If you had stayed with any of your previous teachers and truly committed to their practice, you would have found what you are seeking. But you keep abandoning each practice before it can bear fruit, always thinking the answer must be somewhere else." The student felt this truth land heavily. He had been seeking externally because he did not trust that the answers could be found within his own experience. He had been looking for someone to give him enlightenment because he did not believe he could find it himself. The Buddha's final teaching was not a new technique or a secret method, the old teacher said. It was a call to take responsibility for your own awakening, to trust yourself, to commit to the path not because a teacher told you to, but because you have seen for yourself that this is the way that leads to freedom. Teachers can point the way. Teachings can offer maps. But you must walk the path. You must do the practice. You must discover truth through your own direct experience. The student stayed with this teacher, not because he thought this teacher had some special secret the others lacked, but because he finally understood that it was time to stop seeking and start practicing. He committed to a simple daily meditation practice. Nothing exotic, nothing dramatic, just showing up day after day, sitting with whatever arose, gently returning to his breath when his mind wandered, being patient with himself through the ups and downs of the process. Years passed. His practice deepened, not because of dramatic breakthroughs, but through small, almost imperceptible shifts that accumulated over time. He learned to meet his thoughts without being lost in them, to experience emotions without being controlled by them, to rest in awareness even as everything else changed. He discovered that peace was not something someone could give him. It was something that emerged naturally when he stopped fighting with his own experience and learned to be fully present with life as it is. This teaching about self-reliance in spiritual practice is vital for anyone on a path of inner development. We can read many books, attend many retreats, study with many teachers, and all of this can be valuable. But ultimately, the work is yours to do. The transformation is yours to allow. The practice is yours to embody. No one else can do it for you. This does not mean you should not seek guidance or learn from others. Teachers and teachings can illuminate the path, can help you avoid unnecessary detours, can offer support and encouragement, but they cannot walk the path for you. They cannot do your meditation for you. They cannot have your realizations for you. This is work that only you can do, and paradoxically, recognizing this can be deeply liberating. You are not waiting for someone else to save you or fix you or enlighten you. You have within yourself everything you need to find freedom. As you rest here in the darkness, breathing slowly, you can trust yourself. Trust that your body knows how to rest, how to heal, how to let go into sleep when the time is right. Trust that beneath all your thoughts and worries, there is an awareness that is already peaceful, already whole, already free. You do not need to seek this peace somewhere else. You do not need someone to give it to you. It is already here, in the simple fact of your own aware presence. You are the lamp. You are the refuge. Right here, right now. There is an old story about a wave on the ocean who became terrified because he saw other waves rising and falling, being born and dying, and he thought, "I too will rise and fall. I will die and disappear. This is terrible." The wave was consumed with fear about his own impermanence, about the certainty of his own ending. But then an older, wiser wave came near and said, "You are afraid because you think you are only a wave, something separate and isolated that will disappear. But you are not just a wave. You are also the ocean. The wave is a temporary form that the ocean takes, but the ocean itself continues. When your wave form subsides, the water that made you up does not disappear. It returns to the ocean, which is what it always was. You have never been separate from the ocean. You are the ocean experiencing itself as a wave for a little while." This teaching about our fundamental nature is one of the deepest offerings of Buddhist wisdom. We experience ourselves as separate, isolated individuals, and this sense of separation is the root of much of our fear and suffering. We are afraid of losing what we have. We are afraid of death and ending. We feel alone, disconnected, having to face life by ourselves. But the Buddha taught that this sense of separation is an illusion created by our limited perception. At the deepest level, we are not separate from life itself, from the whole interconnected web of existence. We are expressions of life, forms that consciousness takes temporarily, waves rising from and returning to an ocean that has no beginning or end. When we see this clearly, when we experience it directly, fear dissolves. Not because nothing ever ends, but because we realize that what we truly are cannot end. Forms change, but the fundamental awareness, the consciousness that looks through your eyes and feels through your body, this is not personal. It is universal. It is the ocean itself. This teaching is not meant to be believed, but to be investigated through your own direct experience. In meditation, when you rest in simple awareness, you may notice that the sense of being a separate self becomes lighter. You experience yourself as awareness itself, rather than as a separate person having experiences. This awareness is not limited to your body or your mind. It is vast, open, inclusive of everything. In those moments, you touch the ocean, you recognize your true nature, and fear loses its grip. As you lie here breathing, can you notice the awareness that is noticing everything else? The awareness that is aware of your thoughts, your sensations, your breath? This awareness is not one more thing you possess. It is what you fundamentally are. And this awareness is the same awareness that looks out through every pair of eyes, that experiences life through every living being. You are not a separate wave struggling alone on the ocean. You are the ocean itself, temporarily taking the form of a wave, experiencing itself from this particular perspective, but never actually separate from the whole. When the Buddha was asked what remained after enlightenment, after seeing through the illusion of separation, he remained silent. Not because there is nothing, but because what remains cannot be captured in words. It can only be experienced directly. It is the vast, open, aware presence that you are at your deepest level, which has never been born and will never die, which is not separate from the ocean of existence, but is that ocean knowing itself. Rest in this knowing. Let your sense of being a separate, isolated individual soften. Feel how you are held by existence itself, how you are a part of everything, how the breath that fills your lungs is the same air that fills the lungs of every other breathing being, how the awareness in you is the same awareness in all. You are not alone. You have never been alone. You are life itself, experiencing this particular moment of being human, being here, being you. And now, as we near the end of this journey together, let us rest in the simplest teaching of all. The teaching that needs no stories, no explanations, no elaboration. Just this: you are here. You are breathing. This moment is happening. And this, exactly as it is enough. Not enough as a consolation prize, not enough as making the best of a bad situation, but truly, deeply, completely enough. This moment, with all its imperfections and uncertainties, with you exactly as you are, tired or restless or peaceful or worried, this is the only moment there is, and it is full, it is complete. It is the entirety of life happening right now. All the teachings we have explored tonight, all the stories we have heard, point to this simple recognition that peace is not found by changing this moment into something else, but by meeting this moment fully, by being present to what is actually here. When we stop fighting reality, stop demanding that life be different, stop waiting for some future moment when everything will finally be right, we discover that this moment, just as it is, contains everything we have been seeking. The breath moves in and out, the body settles, thoughts arise and pass like clouds across the sky. None of it needs to be different. None of it needs to be controlled or fixed or improved. Just this, just now, just breathing, being, resting in the natural flow of existence. You have spent so much energy trying to get somewhere else, to become someone else, to fix what you thought was broken, to achieve some state of perfection before you could finally rest. But the invitation has always been to stop, to arrive here, to recognize that you have already reached the destination. Not because everything in your life is perfect, but because this moment, this breath, this awareness, this is all that is ever actually here. And it is always enough. Let your body sink deeper into rest. Let the weight of all you have been carrying begin to release. The weight of striving, the weight of judgment, the weight of trying to control everything, the weight of demanding that life be other than it is. One by one, let these burdens slip away. They were never truly yours to carry. They were habits of mind, patterns learned long ago, ways of being that you can now release. Feel the support beneath you. The earth holding you, gravity gently pulling you down, inviting you to let go, to trust that you are held, that you can stop trying to hold yourself together through sheer force of will. You are supported, you are safe, you can rest. The stories we have journeyed through tonight, all the characters we have met, they were all learning the same essential truth in different ways. Hana the potter, learning to accept imperfection. Daichi the monk, learning that transformation happens quietly. Tomo the fisherman, learning to flow with life's changes. Fumio the merchant, learning to put down useless worry. Aya the gardener, learning to trust rather than control. Each one finding peace not by changing their circumstances, but by changing their relationship to their circumstances. Not by becoming perfect, but by accepting their humanity. Not by grasping, but by opening their hands. Not by fighting, but by allowing. This is what the Buddha discovered under the Bodhi tree and spent the rest of his life teaching. That suffering is optional. That peace is available. That freedom comes not from arranging life perfectly, but from meeting life as it actually is with an open, accepting heart. That you are already whole, already complete, already worthy, already enough. Breathe in, breathe out. Each breath a practice of letting go, of releasing what was, of not grasping at what will be, of simply being here now. Each breath a small death and rebirth, the old moment passing, the new moment arising, the continuous flow of change that is life itself. You do not need to hold on. You can let yourself be carried by this flow, trusting that it knows where it is going, that it has carried countless beings before you and will carry countless beings after you, that you are held within something much larger than your small worried self. Your thoughts will continue. This is natural. They do not need to stop for you to rest. Let them be like background music, noticed but not demanding all your attention. Your body will continue sensing, feeling, being alive. This too is natural. You do not need to become numb or absent. Just let sensation be sensation, arising and passing in the vast space of your awareness. Tomorrow will come with its own challenges and opportunities. But tomorrow is not here now. Now is only this breath, this moment, this quiet darkness, this gentle settling. Let tomorrow take care of itself. Let yesterday rest in the past where it belongs. Be here, fully, completely, in this eternal now that is the only time that actually exists. If sleep comes, welcome it. If sleep does not come yet, welcome this too. Rest is not only in sleep. Rest is in the releasing of effort, in the softening of resistance, in the allowing of things to be as they are. You can rest even while awake. Rest in the spaciousness of acceptance. Rest in the peace that underlies all experience when we stop fighting with it. The path continues beyond this night. Tomorrow you will wake, and the world will make its demands, and challenges will arise. But you will meet them differently now, having remembered something essential. That peace is always available. That acceptance is always possible. That you can meet whatever comes with an open heart. That you are never alone. Never separate from the vast ocean of existence that expresses itself as you, as everyone, as everything. The Buddhist path is not about becoming someone special or achieving some extraordinary state. It is about being fully human, fully present, fully alive to this ordinary miracle of existence. It is about meeting each moment with awareness and compassion, treating yourself and others with kindness, letting go of what cannot be held, accepting what cannot be changed, and finding freedom not in perfecting your circumstances, but in changing your relationship to whatever circumstances arise. You have everything you need. You have always had everything you need. The peace you seek is not elsewhere. It is here, in your own aware presence, in the simple fact of being alive, of breathing, of experiencing this moment. Rest in this knowing. Let it hold you as you drift toward sleep, or simply rest in the silence of this night. Thank you for walking this path with me tonight. Thank you for opening yourself to these teachings, for meeting these stories with your own heart, for being willing to consider that peace might be closer than you thought, that rest might be simpler than you believed, that you might already be enough, exactly as you are. Sleep well, dear friend. Let the night hold you gently. Let your dreams be peaceful, or let there be no dreams at all. Just the deep restoring darkness of true rest. And know that whether you wake in an hour or sleep through until morning, you are exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do, being exactly who you need to be. The Buddha's final words were, "All things are impermanent. Strive on diligently. Even this night will pass. Even this moment is already becoming the next." But in the flow of impermanence, in the constant change that is the nature of all existence, there is a deep peace available to those who stop fighting the flow and learn to move with it. May you find that peace tonight. May you rest deeply and well. May you wake tomorrow refreshed and ready to meet life with an open heart. And may you carry with you the teachings that have been offered here, not as burdens to remember, but as seeds planted that will grow in their own time, that will flower when you need them, that will bear fruit throughout your life. Sleep now. Rest. Let go. You are held. You are safe. You are loved. You are enough. All is well. All is always well. Even when things are difficult, even when life is hard, underneath it all is this fundamental okayness, this basic goodness, this deep peace that nothing can disturb because it is the very nature of awareness itself. Rest in this peace, now and always. Good night.